I invite you to join me in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Join me in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 today. Today is the fourth session of this DNOW, and just to catch everybody up a little bit, and I know how little sleep some of the students also receive, so I'll also catch all of us up just a little bit to remind us. In the first session, we talked about chasing unity. We talked about what biblical community was. And our truth, the one truth for that first session was this: we can do more in community than in isolation. We can do more in community than isolation. And I was really thrilled to hear this song, White Flags, because it does remind us about that there's more in community for us than in isolation. Whether it's you finding Jesus and being in community with Him, there's so much more there. But also finding community among us as followers of Christ. We can do more in community than in isolation. And then we got up Saturday morning, and we talked about one source, one goal, much fruit out of John chapter 15. How we have just one source in our life. If you want community with God, if you want community with each other, there's only one source for that community. And you find it in John 15 where Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Apart from me, you can do nothing. There's nothing you can do without me. And some of us will cry, well, there's a lot of humanitarian things that I can do. Absolutely, but nothing of pure and lasting value and joy can be done apart from Christ. You can't receive your forgiveness. You can't make your way to heaven. You can't find peace with God. That comes from one source. And the one goal is unity, and the fruit that we produce as a result of that is so incredible. Last night we learned that unity comes through a sacrifice and a struggle. That unity that comes at a cost. And in Ephesians, Paul tells us how that cost looks and what that cost looks like, and the things involved in that: humility and gentleness and patience and love and eagerness. And these are important qualities. It's the how-to of community. That we can want community, but how do we have it? And he begins to say, well, if you answer the call of forgiveness through Christ and you commit your life to that, then here are 5 things that you can start looking at immediately. 5 things immediately. Look at these 5 things. Do you need growth in any one of these 5 things? Humility, gentleness, patience, love, eagerness. Do I have any of those? Where do I need to grow? And you can begin to have steps toward a deeper, richer community at that time. Today, in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, we're going to find out and close out this session of community. And it starts with a question, and that question simply is this: who are you? Who are you? Another way that you might say that is, what defines you? Now, some of you have your name on your name tag, and that's great, and there may be no other definition. I know some of you, and your name alone, man, that defines a whole lot of things. And I won't name any names. Honestly, I won't. I really thought about it, but I won't. If I just said a name, y'all would be like, yeah, that pretty much sums that up. But for many of us, most of us, there's something that defines us. There's something that when your name is spoken, something else comes right along with that. And what is that for you? And I asked you, and I hope that you took time to write that on your name tag as well. Not only who you are, we know your name, and if we didn't, we do now. But we also want to know, who are you? Because this is an important question for all of us to answer. Who am I? When it's all said and done, who am I? When it's all said and done, what is going to be my defining moment? What is that which defines me? What is it about me that I would put on a name tag? What is it that I once said about me at my funeral? Have you ever thought about that? I know it's a little morbid, and some of you are like, I'm not in my quarter-life crisis yet, and I don't understand anything about that. But consider for a moment, if you could be a fly on the wall at your funeral and you had somebody up here speaking about you, what would you want them to say about you? And let me give you a hint. you can't start the day before you die. If you want certain things said about you at your funeral, you better get started now, so that it has time to reveal itself. It has time to show integrity over a period of time. You can't wait till the end. You've got to start earlier, because it is important to get a jump start on some of these things. Well, here's our truth for today. And I think it'll be on the screen. Here's our truth for today. I am a child of God, called into a community as an ambassador of reconciliation. I'm going to break all of that down, and we're going to walk through each part of that. The first part is this: I am a child of God. If you look with me in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, and we'll begin in verse 16, but we're going to focus in on 17 through 20. Follow along with me. From now on, then, we do not know anyone from a worldly perspective. Even if we have known Christ from a worldly perspective, yet now we no longer know him in this way. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, and see, the new has come. Community. If we really want a sense of community, it begins with this: I am a child of God. If I'm going to define myself and I can't go back and scratch it out and rewrite it, that was the trick. Sorry. But I am a child of God. And it's a reminder to us, it's so easy, isn't it? It's so easy to write down, for me, it's be so easy. Father or husband or preacher or whatever. I could write down a lot of things. But to be honest with you, the first thing that comes to mind is probably the same as you. It's something that I do, or something that I've been defined by, or about my job, or about my family. I mean, I've been a believer since I was 8 years old. That's 41 years this year. I've been a believer. And yet, it's not necessarily that. I know it defines me, but when you ask me, who are you? That's not the first thing that comes to my mind, and I would suggest it's probably not the first thing that came to any of our minds. But Paul is going to remind us it is important to keep that at the forefront of your mind. I am a child of God. Do you realize there's nothing that will change you more than that statement? There is nothing that is more life-altering than for you to say, I am a child of God. I can say, I'm a high school graduate, and I only have some things that changes. I'm a college graduate. I have a postgraduate degree. Or I'm a social worker. I'm a teacher. I'm an engineer. I'm a plumber. I'm whatever. I'm an artist. Whatever. You can write all those things down, and they are something about you. But the most defining thing, the most life-altering thing you can ever experience is to say, I am a child of God. And to realize that being a child of God doesn't have to be a mystery. In fact, it's simple as this: God created the entire universe perfectly. And when Adam and Eve made the choices they did, everything was broken. Everything fell. Everything from that point on has been broken. All the way to today, your life and my life, they were broken apart from Jesus Christ. And God knew the brokenness and the failure that our life is when held up to the standard of the perfection of God. And there is no way, nothing in my entire life or your life that could ever reach that level of righteousness and that level of perfection. And so God, in His great love for you, God, in His wonderful love, eternal love, said this: I will let my Son, my perfect Son, my only Son, I will let Him live on that earth, die on that cross, take the punishment we all deserve, so that we could have an opportunity to be here today, having said, I have trusted Jesus. I have given my life to God. I believe that what Jesus did was payment over my life. All the bad choices that have been stacking up against me that I could never pay off. I trust that what Jesus did on that cross on that day paid the price. But it doesn't end there. He was buried, and 3 days later, he rose from the dead. And as he rose from the dead, he then gave every one of us a sense of hope, because death is not the final event of our lives. It is only a transitional moment. It is only a page turn to the rest of our life that we then get to spend with God. But the joy and the pleasure of saying, I am a child of God, is so freeing. It is so life-altering. It is so life-changing that God, in His goodness and perfection and righteousness, says, I want you to experience heaven now in preparation for what you're really going to get later on. I am a child of God. And the question is, are you a child of God? Have you come to that moment in your life where you have recognized, I've got more stacking up against me every day that I will never, ever pay off. And I can't. There's nothing I can do. But I'm going to choose to believe that Jesus paid it all because He loved me. So God, I ask you to forgive me, be the boss of my life. I trust what Jesus did satisfies the payment. If you have yet to do that, if you've never done that, why not? Why not today? Why go another moment? Why go another day living with that sin debt? Why go living debt like that when you could be debt-free today before God? Why continue to stack up when God says, I'll remove it. I will take it away. I will throw it away, so that you can say, I am a child of God. But we are called into a community, verse 18. Everything is from God, who has reconciled us to Himself through Christ and has given us this ministry of reconciliation. Look what it says there. Everything's from God. He has reconciled us to Himself. He has reconciled. He has said, okay, you had all of this stacked up against you, but because you have given your life to Jesus and you say, I'm a child of God, then I am bringing you, I've reconciled that. I have made all of the debits and credits line up so that it is paid in full. It is done. Now you and I are now in a sense of community. We are called into a community. Do you realize that just because I give my life to Jesus Christ doesn't mean that I have to go it alone? That has never been the design. And yet so many times we give our heart to Jesus and we think, okay, now I've got to get back to doing it all by myself. My friends, let me ask you a question. Did doing it all by yourself get you to where it gets you to Jesus? No. And it's not going to keep you there either. We are called into a community. When you were isolated from God, it took Jesus being your brother to do what you couldn't do. And now that you're on this side of the cross, I'm a child of God, called into a sense of community. That God has called you into this community. You do not have to go it alone. You don't have to do this alone. We are a community. Another way to say that is we are a team. And while some do a variety of things and we all do different things, we're still a team. We're still a unit. We are still a community called together and not in isolation. Several years ago, there was a very good defensive back, a very good cornerback that played in the NFL. He played first at Florida State, and he ended up at the Atlanta Falcons, and he ended up at Dallas, and he played in a lot of different places. But this individual, he was known as Prime Time. Why? Because he always wanted to be on the highlight reel, and he always tried to get on the highlight reel. In fact, let's watch some of the top 10 plays in his life, in his career. Watch this together.
31-7.
All right, number 5, back in 1990 with, yes, the Yankees. Drive to right center. Bo Jackson can't get it all the way to the wall, and Dion hustling for third, looking for more. Comes to the plate. He's trying to get the inside the park home run. And how about this? Over Mike McFarland, ball gets away. Sanders. He is hype, boy. 2 years he spent with the Yankees.
Number 4, back to college, an old number 2. Although, Mike, I think when it comes to the number 1 player on any field that he took part in, the college gridiron. It's Deion taking it straight up the middle, making a couple moves. For the young people out there, Clemson wasn't Clemson back then, by the way. They were a little bit different. It was Florida State's league back then, right?
Dude, Deion was fast, man. Wow, I forgot how fast he was. Number 3, 1992, against Washington with the Falcons back at the 1, but he always brought it back. I mean, look at this. Just running past dudes. Now, the kicker doesn't count, but wow. Deion had 3 career kickoff returns for touchdowns and a dance after every single one of them. No doubt.
Like, all of these could qualify as number 1. Like,
I mean, seriously.
Number 2, yeah. Back in '89, Falcons, first game against the Rams, who will be a little busy on Sunday, the latest iteration. Look at this. Flubbing it, recovers, breaks a couple tackles with the old school Falcons helmet, takes it to the outside. You're looking at his first punt return for a touchdown. He had 6 of them, a half dozen. That's the first for prime time.
But number 1, we go to 94, and who could forget this? His first game back in the Georgia Dome after leaving the Falcons and signing with the Niners, and all he does here is pick this one off and take it 93 yards to the house. You probably remember the play, but you definitely remember what he said after the game when he reminded everybody whose house it was.
I got one thing to say. This is my house. I built this, and this is my house. I don't care if I'm with the Falcons or not. This is my house, and this will always be my house. Now let's continue.
You know what they didn't have? The fight with Andre Rison. Like, I wanted that in the top 10.
Rison wasn't the 30 for 30. Still the.
This is my house, he said. It was all about Sanders. It was all about him. One of the knocks on him over the years was that it was about him. He would say, well, every team I played on got better because of me. What you see is he's trying to do it all by himself. But you know, there are other members of the team on the field every time you play. We got to remember that it's not something you can do on your own. And you're not designed to do this on your own either. That you have a group of people, students, you have a group of people among you, not only in your little group, but you look around this whole room, there's a group of people. All of us in this room together are coming together in a sense of community. And as we develop this sense of community, we are going to honor God and glorify God in that. And so I suggest to you that if there's somebody in the room you don't know, don't leave this campus before finding out who they are. Because they're your family. They're your community. They're your person. So you need to find out who they are. If you look across this room and you look around the room and say, well, I only know the 6 people I always sit with, I suggest and I challenge you, change that next time you come into this room. Sit with somebody else you don't know. Get to know them. Worship with them. Listen with them. Pray with them. Be with them. But find new people. Get to know them so that we develop more in-depth relationships so that we honor God in community so that we don't feel like we're doing this all alone because that's not the design for us. You go down in verse 20. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ. Ambassadors for Christ. Since God is making His appeal through us, we plead on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. So, I am a child of God, called into community as an ambassador for Christ. You are an ambassador for Christ. You have been given the task of representing God wherever it is you find yourself. That is the task as a follower of Christ we have all been given. That we are to represent Him. Now, you may be out there and you say, well, I represent my family, I represent my school, I represent my job, I represent my boss. But all of that is at one particular level. What I'm suggesting to you as a follower of Christ, the next level up is more important, it's more critical, it is more in need today than anything else. And that is to say, I represent Christ everywhere I go. Am I representing Christ in a way that not only honors Him, but am I representing Christ in a way that would be attractive to those around me who don't know Christ, who don't understand Christ, who have not ever chosen Christ? And am I being an ambassador that would make them want to know more about Jesus or less? That's a question only you can answer, because it is a very personal question. But we go on and it says that be reconciled to God. He made the one who did not know sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. What we see throughout this whole time is this sense of reconciliation. I'm a child of God, called into community as an ambassador of reconciliation. Of reconciliation. There are many people that you may know that have no idea. They would not even fathom. They wouldn't even accept it. They wouldn't understand. How am I not reconciled with God? I'm a good person. I'm not as bad as so-and-so. I don't do as many bad things as this other person. And we so easily and so quickly can find other people worse than us. We can all do that. You've got 4 in mind right now. You know, and if God were to say, hey, you need to get better, you'd be like, wait a minute. Hey, do you know what John did? No, I'm not as bad as that. Hey, you know what Beth did? Now, hey, I'm certainly not as bad as that. Hey, you know what? We compare ourselves to everybody around us so that we can try to one-up somebody else and say, hey, God, look at me. Hey, God, look at me. Hey, I'm not as bad as everybody else. When we start doing that, we might as well just start putting our hands up and doing the dance like Dion did. Because all we're doing is saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. When God says, I want you to do this, I want you to look at Jesus. God, I don't want to look at Jesus. Why? Because when I look at Jesus, I see how bad I'm doing. But Jesus says, hey, you're my brother. You're my sister. We're family. If you're struggling, I'll struggle with you. If you have success, I will enjoy it with you. But we're family. Family sticks up for one another. And family cares for one another. And family does things for one another you wouldn't do for people outside the family. So Jesus says, look, I am the standard, but I am also your brother. Come to me, and I will make you better. Come to me, and I will help you. Come to me, and I will increase you. Come to me, and I will secure you. Come to me, I will strengthen you. Come to me, and I will bring you peace. Come to me. Come to me, Jesus says. We are an ambassador of reconciliation. That need that we all have to come right with God, to come back into a rightness with God, to be reconciled to God through Christ. And we've been given this ministry of reconciliation, as verse 18 says. And we've been given a message of reconciliation, as verse 19 says. And then we're called to being that ambassador of reconciliation. You've been given a ministry. All of you that are followers of Christ, if you can say, I am a child of God, then you are called into community and you are an ambassador of Christ. Amen. With a ministry of reconciliation, a message of reconciliation. To be able to tell somebody, hey, I know a way that you can find peace that you're not finding. Hey, I know a way that you can have a sense of joy that you may not have ever had before. I know a way. I know a guy. That's a funny story in our family all the time, because all the time I'm talking, hey, I need this. Hey, I know a guy that can fix that. Well, hey, I know a guy that can handle that. Well, we need to have, hey, I know a guy. Let me call a guy. And if I don't know a guy, I know a guy who knows a guy. You see where this goes. It doesn't matter what you're dealing with right now. Sadness, brokenness, frustration, depression, thoughts of suicide, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, joys or pleasures or habits or whatever. Listen, I know a guy.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Do you? Do you know a guy? A guy that will change your life. A guy that will rewrite your story. A guy who will give you an extra chapter at the end that you thought you were done. A guy who will rewrite the end. I know a guy. Will you let me introduce him to you?